please welcome War Machine, Vision, and Agent 13, Don Cheadle, Paul Bettany, and Emily Van Steen. Thank you all for coming. First of all, Emily, I want to start. I'm a little confused. Are you Team Iron Man or are you Team Captain America? Because it's...
Very interesting question. You know, Sharon kind of plays both sides a little bit.
Lies, yeah!
Fresh off the critical and financial success of Captain America the Winter Soldier, which did a fair bit better internationally than in America despite the title, the Russo brothers and screenwriters Christopher Markus and Stephen McFeely were asked to return for a third yet unnamed Captain America movie. The Russo brothers wanted this movie to be Civil War.
The concept of Civil War is very important to us. We felt like we needed to go in a radical direction if we were going to do another Captain America film.
In fact, the theme of freedom versus security, which is prominent in Captain America the Winter Soldier, is the same theme that drives the dispute in the comic book arc Civil War. But Kevin Feige wasn't completely sold on the idea. Then Batman v Superman was pushed back a year to avoid competing with Avengers Age of Ultron, and put that movie in direct competition with Captain America 3, until they moved the release date 6 weeks earlier. With that competition, Feige gave the go-ahead for Captain America 3 to become Captain America Civil War.
Civil War became the overriding principle. It was like, you do realize we need Robert.
Robert Downey Jr.'s original contract was for 6 movies. Those movies were Iron Man, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, The Avengers, Iron Man 3, and Avengers Age of Ultron. His contract was renegotiated for Avengers Infinity War. To get him in Civil War, it would have to be renegotiated again. The exact numbers are not known, but it's rumored he made $40 million upfront, with a percentage of the profits add to that if Civil War out-earned the Winter Soldier. In addition, Black Widow, Falcon, and Winter Soldier would be returning from the previous movie. Ant-Man, War Machine, Scarlet Witch, Hawkeye, and Vision would be joining the cast, along with the introduction of the MCU's Black Panther and Spider-Man, which is courtesy of a recent deal Marvel made with Sony. There were no outright production issues, but this movie easily had one of the biggest casts of any superhero movie. It'd be extremely easy for Civil War to become an overbloated mess.
Some motherfuckers are always trying to ice skate uphill. New York.
They cannot be pissed at the Avengers for New York for one reason. The World Security Council launched a nuke at it. If not for the Avengers, New York wouldn't exist. The Avengers certainly caused some collateral damage, but if they weren't there, the city, or at least a chunk of it, would have been wiped off the map.
One little mistake.
Let's break down the 4 major events that led to the Sokovia Accords.
New York.
Starred by Loki, who brought the Avengers together with his antics. So a little redundant, but no matter which way you look at, the Avengers can't be blamed for New York.
Washington, D.C.
For Captain America, Black Widow, Falcon, and Nick Fury saved 20 million people. Surely not nearly that many died during the battle.
Lagos.
And the key thing to remember here is that Scarlet Witch and Captain America didn't kill those people. They just blamed themselves for it. Crossbones did. He was the one with the bomb, after all.
Sokovia.
And yeah, that one really is on the Avengers. That's not completely fair. Most of the Avengers had no idea what was happening.
So you're going for artificial intelligence and you didn't want to tell the team?
Right. That's right. You know why? Because we don't have time for a city hall debate. I don't want to hear the man was not meant to meddle medley.
And they weren't thrilled when they found out.
Whoa. It's going around.
Come on, use your words, buddy. I have more than enough words to describe you, Stark.
Only certain Avengers are responsible. Bruce Banner, who's not in this movie, and Tony Stark, who was the one who pressured Bruce into helping him create Ultron.
You think this is funny?
No. It's probably not, right? This is very terrible.
If the Accords were fair, they wouldn't limit what the Avengers do. They limit what Tony can build. I can't imagine Cap signing that Accord pretty damn quick.
That's it. You just roll over, show your belly every time somebody snarls.
Only when I've created a murder bot.
Spidey is really well done in this movie, and while the look of the costume isn't as comic book accurate as past movies, I like how, with even his small screen time, they gave us a believable origin for the costume.
I could have stuck the landing a little better. It's just a new suit. Wait, it's nothing. Mr. Stark, it's perfect. Thank you.
This is the first movie to ever do this. Tom Holland does a solid job as both Peter and Spider-Man, which is more than I can say for past actors. Tobey Maguire was pretty much perfect as a 60s-era Peter Parker.
Hey. Can I take your picture? I need one with a student in it.
But as Spider-Man was a bit nowhere.
Hey, kiddo, let Mom and Dad talk for a minute, will you?
Whereas Andrew Garfield played a great Spider-Man.
You a cop? Really? You seriously think I'm a cop? Cop in a skin-tight red and blue suit. You know, you're...
But his Peter Parker was too cool in his first movie.
Put him down, Flash.
Take the picture.
Put him down, Eugene!
And in his second movie, he was just a selfish dick.
I want to help you, Mr. Osborn. I really, really do. I can't.
Tom Holland seems to have a solid grasp on both aspects of the character. And since one of the themes of the movie is responsibility, which is Spider-Man's jam...
Remember, with great power comes great responsibility.
He kinda fits into the movie with no problem. So why bring him up? Well, the problem is everyone else in this movie has that responsibility theme, but it's linked to stuff that actually happened or is brought up in this movie. Spider-Man has it over an event that happens off-screen that we never see. It's not that he doesn't share the theme, but he just doesn't share it in the same way, which makes him feel like a piece that doesn't fit nearly as well as the rest. But he does end up working because he's executed so well you end up not caring that much whether or not he fits into the theme perfectly. This movie actually had two scripts, one with Spider-Man and one without. Obviously, another character was likely included in the Spider-Man script, but not the other script to keep the sides even. Which brings us to Ant-Man.
I'm the boss.
The one likely left out of the Spider-Man Less script. He has very similar issues, except he really doesn't share any of the themes of the characters. He does have reasons for being here, which I'll get to later. I guess you could say responsibility plays into it, but like Spider-Man, he had nothing to do with the events that drove the Accords and this movie's plot. Again, it's easy to overlook this because the character is well handled, and both he and Spider-Man contribute to the airport battle in fun and exciting ways. But it's very clear that these two characters didn't actually need to be here, and were written in probably because the Ant-Man movie was somewhat popular and Spider-Man played a big role in the comic book Civil War.
Not the matches. Well, it's a style of decorating. It's called eclectic. Well, the theory behind it is, if you've got really fine pieces of furniture, it doesn't matter if they match, they will go together. Oh, look, Dad, as dear as I'm sure that this piece is to you, I just don't think it goes with anything here. I know! It's eclectic!
Feel your left hand's free and your right hand grip with another left hand watches right and slip. Schwartz is gone.
Something very brutal about the fact that Bucky strangled the mom with his human hand.
Yeah, huh?
His real hand indicates a more personal involvement with the axe, but that's my issue with it. In the third act of this movie, it can be easily said that Bucky's metal arm represents Hydra's control over him, which is why you can consider Tony's revenge complete when he blasts the arm off. He is effectively destroying the part of Bucky that was made by Hydra, the part of Bucky that killed his parents. But by having Bucky use his human hand, it diminishes this idea in the movie. It doesn't destroy the idea, but just implying that Bucky has more of a personal involvement in this act than he actually does is very misleading.
Oh, this must be where he loses the arm!
In a departure from the comic books, though almost all MCU movies view their comic books as guidelines at best, no one dies in this movie. The big turning point of the comic book series was the clone of Thor killing Goliath. The similar moment here is the fall and injury of War Machine, and it's worth noting I have no idea how War Machine could possibly survive this fall.
Of my friend, I can only say this. Of all the souls I have encountered in my travels, his was the most human.
But a problem with the MCU is how it doesn't seem to want to kill any noteworthy characters not named Quicksilver. Nick Fury dies.
Time of death.
But it was all a fake out.
We got better.
And Loki dies. Then comes back.
I thought you dead.
We got better.
And then he dies. Then comes back again.
We got better.
Hell, remember when Coulson was killed?
You want to find out?
That didn't stick well at all.
Agent Coulson was killed in action before the battle in New York. Got the full report.
We got better.
I will say the filmmakers have a decent reason for not killing characters.
This is a film about divorce. It's a family getting divorced from one another. If you then were to kill a character, it becomes a movie about a family getting divorced and then somebody dies while they're getting divorced.
Yeah.
Those are two different stories that you're telling.
Mm-hmm.
What we wanted people to walk out of the theater with, all of us, was
the tragedy.
The tragedy of a family falling apart, not the tragedy of somebody's dead.
I'm not completely sure I agree with them, but they do make a damn good point.
I think I can swing this over the balcony. Stop it! Stop it! Stop it! I listened to both. I was going to drop it on you. Ooh, that's a good one.
A large part of Zemo's plan seems to involve him being wildly opportunistic, and the rest seems to be filled in with luck. I think it's safe to assume he's just taking advantage of the Accords happening and had nothing to do with them being established. He also knew where he could find Bucky's book after S.H.I.E.L.D. leaked all their Hydra files online in Captain America the Winter Soldier.
When S.H.I.E.L.D. fell, Black Widow released Hydra files to the public. Millions of pages.
After that, it really goes to shit. Zemo's plan is to frame Bucky for an explosion that will result in Bucky getting captured in Bucharest, even though it's impossible the files leaked would list Bucky's current known location, considering he was still under Hydra's control at the time of the leak. He knows exactly where Bucky will be taken to and sets up an EMP. He also knows which doctor will be called in to talk to Bucky. He also knows that that doctor won't be recognized by anyone else who works there. This is thin, but it gets worse. He also knows Bucky will reveal the location of the Uber Winter Soldiers, and it's very possible he even set a special command to allow Bucky to remember them. But then he also plans for Tony to stumble across information that the Doctor was killed and was replaced by him. He also knew that Tony would go to Sam and ask for Cap and Bucky's destination. And he also knew Sam would give Tony that information. Yes, Sam does have a good reason for telling Tony this, but given the state of Tony and Cap's relationship, it's a gamble, and there's a good chance Sam wouldn't tell Tony the location. Then, he also knows the computer will work well enough to play Tony a video.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Wilson. Your camera will pick up nothing but black fog.
What's a gold star?
And that Tony will go mad with rage and try to kill Bucky and Cap. It's honestly not a completely insane reaction to the video, but what if Tony was just too exhausted after all the fighting? What if Tony had stumbled across this information that Hydra killed his parents earlier? After all, the information was leaked in the Winter Soldier. What if Captain America had never learned that Hydra had anything to do with the Stark's death? I see no way that that would be in the Hydra files. What if Cap had decided to pull Tony aside and tell him this information? Again, there's no way the Hydra files would know this. It involves way more luck than your average plan. It is honestly one of the very few aspects of this movie that is comparable to Batman v Superman. Zemo and Lex Luthor's plans are both pretty goddamn batshit. But I will say at least Zemo as a villain fits nicely with the themes of the movie, whereas Lex is just nuts.
Ding, 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 ding.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
While Zemo does fall into the same hole as a lot of the other MCU villains where he just isn't all that noteworthy, he does fit nicely with the themes, which does make him stronger than average. Really, they're running to a plane and rather than shoot the plane, you're shooting down everything around the plane? That clean, perfect logic you seem to want to throw around seems to have completely left you.
The behavior is highly illogical.
Can you pick up this movie and watch it without watching the rest of the MCU and still enjoy it? Maybe? Can you follow every single thing that's happening and miss nothing? No way. You could make that argument for most sequels, but this one is particularly bad. Characters like Hawkeye and Ant-Man literally just appear with no introduction.
Should be good.
Captain America and Bucky's past friendship isn't even established until early Act 3.
You remember that time we had to ride back from Rockaway Beach in the back of that freezer truck? You blew $3 trying to win that stuffed bear for a redhead.
What was her name again?
Dolores. You called her Doc.
She's gotta be 100 years old right now.
So are we, pal.
Without prior movies, you'd have no idea why Cap seems to care about this guy with the metal arm.
If he's this far gone now, I should be the one to bring him in.
Why?
Because I'm the one least likely to die trying.
The destruction of Sokovia is brought up and introduced very briefly and plays such a huge role in this movie. Hell, it plays a role in the movie before it's even established what it was.
His name was Charlie Spencer. You murdered him in Sokovia.
It's commonly said that you shouldn't have to do research to enjoy a movie, and I completely agree. Now, with the sequel, I don't think it's too much to expect everyone to see the previous movies, but this movie doesn't function as just a Captain America movie. Honestly, while The Winter Soldier does play a noteworthy role here, this is much more a sequel to Age of Ultron than anything else.
That up there, that's the end game. How are you guys planning on beating that? Together.
Just the raw number of movies you should watch to get the full impact of this movie is a bit excessive. You should watch all the Iron Man movies, both Avengers movies, both Captain America movies, The Incredible Hulk. William Hurt becomes the second actor from The Incredible Hulk, playing a noteworthy character to reappear in the MCU after Robert Downey Jr., and you should probably also watch Ant-Man for good measure.
It just sounds exhausting.
It's tough for me to tell since I'm familiar with all these movies, but I'm willing to bet if you aren't up on the MCU, this movie probably comes off really rushed with no setup before shit goes down. People love to nitpick this movie, and I'm completely fine with that. I had to nitpick it too along with many other movies, but it's fun to joke about movies whether they be good or bad. But many of the people critical of this movie will turn around and praise Batman v Superman.
Number 1, Batman v Superman. Pure, unadulterated comic book movie to the finest. Zack Snyder, Ben Affleck, you should be proud.
Before I go too much further, you are allowed to like Batman v Superman. No one is saying you can't like that movie. In fact, I have a secret confession. I like the old 1980s Dolph Lundgren Masters of the Universe movie.
That's just terrible.
But here's the issue. I know the reason I like that movie is because of the nostalgia I have for it. Seeing it at a certain point in my life where He-Man was, in my mind, just awesome and ignoring the very clear flaws of the movie. But looking at it from an objective filmmaking standpoint, it really sucks. But even though I like this movie and most people don't, I would never sit down and try to explain to those people how they're either not smart enough or not mature enough to understand the deep artistry of this movie, because it's not actually there. It's a very dumb movie. And that's where I come back to the comparison between Captain America Civil War and Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice. No matter what people like to say, it's impossible not to compare these two movies. They came out so close together, featured two major superheroes going mano a mano, a major twist involving one or both of their parents, a villain in the shadows trying to force them to fight amongst themselves, a ton of other heroes are also thrown in to have minor roles, the heroes getting heat from the public about doing their thing unchecked, an explosion at a government meeting. If these two movies weren't made so close to each other, I'd be forced to conclude that Marvel just ripped DC off in an effort to show one-upmanship. The MCU has dabbled in themes before, but this is the second time when its theme really feels like a driving force in the movie, the first being Captain America the Winter Soldier. The core theme that goes through most of the characters is responsibility. Tony feels responsible for Sokovia.
He wanted to make a difference, I suppose. I mean, we won't know because we dropped a building on him while we were kicking ass.
Cap and Wanda feel responsible for the explosion in Lagos.
It's my fault.
That's not true. I should have clocked that bomb vest long before you had to deal with it.
Bucky feels responsible for the last 75 years.
Do you even remember them? I remember all of them.
For the most part, all the Avengers feel responsible for all the collateral damage that happened on their watch. Spider-Man is pretty much all about responsibility as a character.
Look, when you can do the things that I can, but you don't, and then the bad things happen, they happen because of you.
To further explore the theme of responsibility, this movie also dives into a secondary theme that's closely related: vengeance. We see that the general public wants vengeance in the form of control over the Avengers for the collateral damage they've caused. The character that best represents this theme of vengeance is Black Panther, who seeks revenge after he thinks Bucky kills his father, which all comes together nicely at the end when Tony seeks revenge against Bucky for the death of his parents.
Vengeance has consumed you. It's consuming them. I'm done letting it consume me.
They would seem at odds to a degree because Bucky had nothing to do with the death of Black Panther's father. He was framed, but that's the point. He is also innocent of killing Tony's parents. Even though he blames himself, it was actually him. He just had no control over his actions.
It wasn't him, Tony. Hydra had control of his mind.
For all intents and purposes, it seems like when he's triggered, he just becomes a prisoner in his own mind, which is rather terrifying. But then it goes back to the Avengers at the beginning of the movie. We see that Scarlet Witch and Captain America blame themselves for the bomb, but the truth is, they're innocent. Crossbones is responsible for the bomb. They might have screwed up, but they're only human. They're no more to blame than Bucky is for the death of Tony's parents. These themes that run throughout are the reason why this movie works instead of just being a clusterfuck that movies with this many characters tend to be. So many of the characters are reflected in each other that it doesn't feel like we're watching a dozen or so separate stories, and instead feels like we're watching one story, for the most part. There are times when scenes feel a bit disconnected.
A pinch of paprika. A pinch.
But these scenes are good in and of themselves, and they do link more to the core story as they progress. Another reason why this movie works is that every character has a reason for being there and for choosing their side. Vision looks at the raw facts of the situation.
In the 8 years since Mr. Stark announced himself as Iron Man, the number of known enhanced persons has grown exponentially. The number of potentially world-ending events has risen at a commensurate rate.
He's saying it's our fault?
I'm saying there may be a causality.
Black Widow wants to maintain some control over the Accords.
If we have one hand on the wheel, we can still steer. If we take it off...
Aren't you the same woman who told the government to kiss her ass a few years ago?
I'm reading the terrain.
War Machine is a soldier. Taking orders from the government is practically second nature to him.
117 countries want to sign this. 117, Sam, and you're just like, no, it's cool.
Spider-Man thinks people are responsible if bad things happen, and you have the power to stop them, and you don't. Black Panther doesn't really choose a side. He just wants to kill Bucky and chooses the side that opposes him. In fact, as we see throughout the movie, it's clear Black Panther, from an ideological standpoint, allies much more of Captain America.
2 people in a room can get more done than 100.
Bucky really doesn't have a choice. He and Cap find themselves on a mission to stop far more powerful Winter Soldiers from being activated. I suspect if all things were equal, Bucky with his past and how he blames himself would likely side with Tony. And while they do minimal to explain why other characters choose their sides, it becomes much clearer when you look at past movies. There are quick throwaway lines in Civil War that explain where a lot of the characters stand, that need context of past movies to fully understand. In Ant-Man, you see how Hank Pym is constantly telling Scott that you can't trust a Stark.
I spent half my life trying to keep this technology out of the hands of a Stark. I'm sure as hell not going to hand deliver it to one now.
You also get some history between Ant-Man and Falcon, which was the reason why Falcon knew to reach out to him.
Hank Pym always said you never can trust a Stark.
Hawkeye sees it as his responsibility to protect Scarlet Witch after her brother gave his life protecting him.
Howard did.
Scarlet Witch is not sure what side to take until Hawkeye talks to her and allows her to see things more clearly.
Look, you want to mope, you can go to high school. You want to make amends, you get off your ass.
Just like he did in Age of Ultron.
This is all our fault.
Hey, look at me. It's your fault. It's everyone's fault. Who cares? Are you up for this? Doesn't matter what you did or what you were. If you go out there, you fight, and you fight to kill. Staying here, you're good. I'll send your brother to come find you, but if you step out that door, you are an Avenger.
Falcon, much like Cap, questions who will be in charge of the Avengers if they sign the Accords.
So let's say we agree to this thing. How long is it going to be before they LoJack us like a bunch of common criminals?
Which makes sense since he saw how things went down in The Winter Soldier. There's also a line in The Winter Soldier that cements where Falcon would stand on this issue.
I can't ask you to do this, Sam. You got out for a good reason. Dude, Captain America needs my help. There's no better reason to get back in.
And considering how Hawkeye stayed retired when Tony's side asked for help.
Who else signed?
Tony, Rhodey, Vision.
Clint?
Says he's retired.
Yet jumped on board when Captain America did.
Cap needs our help. Come on.
Probably fair to say he feels very similar. And that leaves Tony and Steve, whose sides both make sense for how the characters have developed. In Captain America the First Avenger, Steve was a military man, in many ways like War Machine. Sure, he doesn't always follow orders to a T.
I'd like to surrender myself for disciplinary action.
But for all intents and purposes, he was a government man. In Iron Man 2, we see Tony making a mockery of a government hearing and showing no respect.
Because I'm your nuclear deterrent. It's working. We're safe. America is secure. You want my property? You can't have it. But I did you a big favor. I have successfully privatized world peace.
How did Tony end up the government man and Steve end up the rebel? For Tony, it was Age of Ultron, that experimenting with power can have massive unforeseen consequences. And for Steve, it was the Winter Soldier, the realization that following a massive organization, even one formed by trustworthy people, can have negative repercussions if the wrong people gain power in that group. Thus, Tony now thinks superheroes are best if put in some sort of check.
We need to be put in check. Whatever form that takes, I'm game. If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless, we're no better than the bad guys.
While Cap thinks large organizations are corruptible.
What if this panel sends us somewhere we don't think we should go? What if there's somewhere we need to go and they don't let us? We may not be perfect, but the safest hands are still our own.
This movie is thick with plot and really should be an absolute mess, but because much of the characters feel justified in their actions and many follow similar themes, all the separate stories feel like one cohesive story. Sure, Spider-Man and Ant-Man were completely necessary, but they were two characters who had arguably the best moments in the movie. Compare this to Wonder Woman in Batman v Superman, who is a cool character, but literally contributes nothing to the plot. And while she does have cool moments in the Doomsday fight, they are far less noteworthy than the cool moments Spider-Man and Ant-Man get in this movie. There isn't a single aspect of Civil War that isn't better than Batman v Superman. With far less characters and longer screen time, Batman v Superman feels like the mess Civil War probably should have been. I already talked about the themes of Civil War. Pretty much it's the themes Batman v Superman pretended like it had, but really didn't. The aspect where they come closest is the acting. Jeremy Irons and Ben Affleck are both in top form as Alfred Pennyworth and Crazy Bat Murder Man. But then in Civil War we get Robert Downey Jr., who does a rather amazing job in this movie. Even with the crap Tony pulls here, I completely understand where he's coming from. Some of that is the writing, but some of that is also Downey Jr.'s performance, whose face frequently tells you more than his words. Like many actors who get a big paycheck and phone it in, Johnny Depp. Downey Jr. turns in arguably his best performance as Iron Man in this movie. It's true that if you're not familiar with the MCU, this movie may not work for you at all. But as someone who's watched all these movies quite a bit, watched tons of special features on the making of them, I have to say I thought this was great and easily the best follow-up to Age of Ultron and the Winter Soldier one could hope for. I give this movie a 10 out of 10 and consider it the second best in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Hey, if you like this video, please make sure to hit that like button and go ahead and subscribe. That helps me out a lot. And if you really love this video, consider visiting my Patreon page.